First up this week, and for the first time, Pan-African consumers have been given an opportunity to vote for their most admired and valued brands. Topping the list is a telecoms company. It's followed by a bank. Well, joining us now, Thebe Ikalafeng, founder of the Brand Africa Forum. It oversees the entire process. And sitting next to him is Matola, who's Chief Executive Officer of Brand South Africa. Gentlemen, thank you for joining us, and a very warm welcome. Miller, let me start with you. You're someone who is tasked with marketing a country. Lists like this, as interesting a reading as they make, what value do they add?
Well, thanks, Jeremy. The value of strong business brands, such as the ones we've seen coming up, is that they actually add to the reputation and image of the country that they represent. And for that reason, they are actually very good carriers, not only of nation brand reputation, but they also actually contribute towards the economic development goals.
Is there a direct correlation between the top brands and a direct investment opportunity?
Oh, certainly, yes. You'll see a correlation in terms of, for example, the GDP growth, but also you'll see the levels of investment in terms of those countries. In fact, if you look at the list of nation brands, the nation brands that are making strong efforts to really build themselves up as strong nation brands are exactly the ones from which we see a lot of business brands coming.
Thebe Ikalafeng, I know that this has been a dream of yours for a long time, and we can work through some of the brands on the list in just a moment. But is there one lesson here? Is there a different way in which these brands are doing things as opposed to perhaps brands in other parts of the world?
Well, I think thank you, Jeremy, for having us. I think the brands which are doing well here are the brands which are truly connected to their consumers. I think you're going to begin to see that the brands at the top of the list are those brands where consumers view them as if they're an extension of their life. They help enhance their way of living. They are part of what creates, if you will, quality life or a better life.
But that's true for any brand. Is there a specific African strategy that these brands are doing? Is there something different, or is the lesson universal?
The lesson is universal first, and second, and second most, the connection is African. You know, if you look at a brand like MTN, which is obviously the top of the list, what they've been able to do, they've been able to be truly African yet global, and that's an important lesson for most African brands if they're going to become global.
And that's not only a lesson for commercial brands; it's a lesson for country brands too, isn't it? You're playing in that global sphere right now.
It is certainly a lesson for nation brands as well. If you look at brands such as Kenya, brands such as Nigeria, they also have quite a number of their service brands spreading across the continent, and whether it's in the area of financial services or in the area of petrochemicals, you will see that there is a constant correlation between the country brand as well as the service brands that they come from those countries.
All right, Thebe Ikalafeng, you mentioned MTN. It tops the list by a long way in terms of brand value. It's followed by Absa, which is another South African-based brand, and then a Nigerian brand, NNPC. MTN and Absa, what are they doing differently? Why are they on top of the list?
You know, I think what's interesting, perhaps even about Absa, if I should talk about that for one moment, is Absa doesn't operate across the continent. It's really a South African brand, but of course the story of Absa linked to the story of Barclays perhaps has been able to carry the brand.
So there's a halo effect of the brand
across the borders. Yes, and if you look at a brand like MTN, for many years MTN lagged Vodacom, as you recall. But then there came a time when MTN said we needed to create a more aspirational, universal African message. And when they started attaching themselves to the CAF Cups, started attaching themselves to the World Cup to communicate this global can-do attribute of theirs.
It's actually a very interesting point that you raised, because a banking brand that is very operative in the rest of Africa, like Standard Bank, for instance, I'm looking through the list.
It's not on the
list.
There. So, you know, that is an amazing way. You know, when I saw the list first time, I said, oh my word, this is incredible omission. It must be a type of somebody who obviously doesn't like Standard Bank. But the truth of the matter is, if you look at Standard Bank, operates as Standard Bank in South Africa and Stanbic in the rest of the continent. And when you go to the rest of the continent, you go to places like Nigeria. Standard Bank is not even in the top 6 in Nigeria, because the local banks are that much stronger. So it means that while Standard Bank as a business, so when it comes to most valuable, Standard Bank is the most valuable financial services services. But most valued, and here comes the distinction, most valued speaks to two things. It speaks to one, an admiration, and second, the valuation of that admiration in terms of its impact on the bottom line of the organization. But when it comes to most valuable, Standard Bank is far and away more valuable than ABSA. But when it comes to how consumers rate it, it doesn't, because they don't have that level of reach or admiration across the continent.
Miller Matola, Brand SA now has got all of this raw and very valuable data. How do you use it?
Well, part of how you could use it, Jeremy, is really to ensure that those brands that are emerging there as very strong, valuable, and most valued brands, we support them as Brand South Africa. We get to the point where business understands that there is a correlation between growing our GDP, our economic growth, and having very strong brands coming from our country. And I think from our perspective is that we will have to work very closely with those brands as brand carriers, as flagships for the country, to even build South Africa's brand reputation.
Thebe Ikalafeng, a final question to you. What I find very interesting is if you look at the country list, I see South Africa, Nigeria, dominating the top 25, and I think one entry from Kenya at number 15, a brand called Safari.com, which is a telecom services outfit. What does that say about brand development in Africa? It's dominated by two big players.
Well, it's dominated by two big players. Nigeria, the sheer scale of the country means that their brand, any brand that does the basic job will have a better chance to succeed. It says that South Africa, and any survey across the continent, whether it's banking survey, whether it's brand survey, any survey will show that South Africa leads by 60% or so across the continent, and followed by Nigeria and Kenya. And coincidentally, as Miller has said, those are the three countries which are much more aggressive in terms of nation branding, much more aggressive in terms of marketing themselves out into the world.
Thebe, I know this has been a lifelong dream, as I said of yours, so well done for finally getting it together. It makes some great reading, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much for coming in. Thebe Ikalafeng with us, founder of the Brand Africa Forum, along with Miller Matola, who's a Chief Executive Officer of Brand South Africa. Interesting stuff. Your thoughts and comments on the most valuable and admired brands. I wonder if that list surprises you. I suspect not, but it'll be interesting to hear what you have to say on our Facebook page. Coming up on the program, we're going to be in conversation with one of the world's great consumer behavior thinkers. It's well worth watching.